have the same result as a trust would have.
Okay, good to know. I know that I'm pretty sure they have wills and all of that. It's just there's so many different things. We get worried. Go ahead.
I just want to interject here just because, Don, I know so many people like myself before you and I became friends and I could give you a call and ask you these questions. What does, and again, the price is going to vary greatly depending on assets and the complication, but give us an idea, especially like in David's case that he's talking about with his parents. What would that type of, doing that deed or life estate, I think you said, what would that cost for say you to do that for someone?
It's not expensive at all. An enhanced life estate deed is a $350 document. It costs, typically they're 2 or 3 pages. It costs $20, maybe $23 to record, unless the property is, well, actually, because it's not changing the ownership, even if there were a mortgage, there wouldn't be any documentary stamp taxes. So that would be it, essentially the cost of the deed and the recording fees.
Awesome. And this is what I want to really bring to people, because, you and I have had these discussions all these years, because I think I came to it, like I think a lot of my friends come to it. If you haven't really, dealt with an attorney or had an attorney that you do regular business with, the idea is, oh my gosh, this is going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars to do anything. And so I'll just wait. And, I think we've talked about even with my dad's own estate. I know you had advised me through that. And talking about my in-laws, that we still got to get that trust going with them, but just super reasonable. And it just seems like doing this pre-planning saves not only time and frustration and energy, but it saves money in a lot of cases doing it early.
Oh, it does. It does. And there are so many different things that can be accomplished, but it does save time. And it also, when things aren't put into place, I can't tell you how many people have come to me after the fact and shared the horror stories of wishing they had done something beforehand because of the problems they encountered by not having done so. And in addition to that, when you set these types of things up, it's so much smoother on the folks that you want to provide for. And not only, I think, is cost been a deterrent, even though that's wrong, it's not super costly, but I think it's difficult for people to talk about their death and what it's going to look like when they are gone, and if they have children, who's going to care for them. And these are things we easily put off because they're not fun things to deal with, and it's right. Just easier to wait till another day.
I'm just thinking about the poor soul who's got to empty all my crap out of this house, because I'm never leaving this house, and I've been here 20 years almost. Hey, we have a question from Jennifer Conklin on the screen there for you.
Oh, hi, Jennifer. When you set it up that way, our tax.
Mm-hmm. Grandfather at the rate the parents were at. I think maybe she's talking about with
property tax?
homesteaded tax.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now I'm going to get a little detailed here because
it's okay.
There are 2 homestead protections in Florida. One is the property tax homestead exemption, where you get the exemption and the break on the taxes. The property tax homestead exemption with a $50,000 reduction, and then of course it's capped at how much your taxes can go up each year, so that when you own a home for a long period of time, you're not being gouged by property taxes continually if you own the same property. And recently, with the portability of the homestead, that also gives Florida residents a great tax benefit. Then there's the constitutional homestead exemption that provides for exemption from creditor claims. That's a whole separate issue, but it also is tied to your homestead property in Florida, which is why a lot of people do move to Florida or buy homes in Florida and make them Florida their residency, is for that creditor protection. But To answer the property tax question, if you do put a property into a trust, you don't lose your homestead exempt status, and you would retain the property tax benefits.
Awesome.
That's awesome news.
You're being like on a quiz show or something.
The only thing that comes up is a real kind of a gray area, and I'm surprised this question hasn't been certified to the Florida court, or maybe it's in the process, Supreme Court, is that when you put a homestead property, a married couple puts their homestead property into a trust, while they don't lose the property tax benefit, it hasn't been settled as to whether the homestead exemption from creditor claims remains. And therefore, that is something we don't normally do, is put a homestead property of a married couple into a trust. Any other properties they own, we would do so freely. And that's why, David, for your parents' example, it may be better to do the enhanced life estate deed rather than put it into a trust.
Yeah, definitely.
Beautiful. All right. So what are some more questions that we have?
I can offer a little more information while people are thinking of questions, and I may trigger some. But what we typically do when someone wants a will is we include in that a living will, which is essentially a name for a do not resuscitate document, where people can determine whether they want to be kept alive by artificial means if there's really no chance that they're going to recover or have a viable life. And then we also include a designated healthcare surrogate. So in the event someone lacks capacity to make medical decisions for themselves, they can name somebody who can have the authority to talk to doctors on the patient's behalf and make medical decisions for them. So we kind of put it all together in a package along with their wills. And if they decide to get a trust, we typically include what is called a pour over will, so that what's vital with a trust is if you have a trust created, you must transfer the property into the trust in the name of the trustee. And there are sometimes I've run across people who have paid money to have a trust drafted, and then they never retitled any of their property, and they have a worthless piece of paper. If you don't title things into the name of the trust cannot be administered, and you've essentially wrecked the whole provision of a trust. So it's very important. It's called funding the trust, and that must be done in order to have that work. But the pour over will essentially would be put as a safety net, so that in the event some assets were never either transferred into the trust or maybe later acquired and just that person forgot to title them properly, the pour over will, while still needing to go through probate, will direct that the assets that are not already in trust pour over into the trust so that they can be administered pursuant to the terms of that trust. And you can be as detailed as you want in terms of giving out assets. You can put age restrictions, what it's used for, a variety. You can be as detailed and as creative as you would like to be.
Wonderful. And I just want to interject right here that to our viewers that are listening, you know, what I love about talking with you, Don, is that you make it understandable. You know, the way that you're talking and explaining right now is exactly like we've talked together for, you know, years and years. When I just, you know, bring you different questions about certain things. And I really appreciate that, you know, these things that can be, you know, they're not overly complicated to understand, but just not things that, you know, regular that we deal with on a daily basis, but it makes sense when you explain them. And I just really appreciate your detail on everything. And so back to, you know, me, I'm always about the money. How much would you say? Okay, I mean, again, if we're talking about these pour over and adding the trust and all that, we're definitely costing more money. But let's just say we've got, you know, a young couple and they've gotten married, they're starting a family, and they need a will, because like you said, we need some direction, and God forbid. And I know, my husband and I drug him into the room and said, okay, we have to do this. I know it's super, uncomfortable to talk about it, especially when you're young and have this family, but it's so necessary. How much would, just your basic will like that start off at?
Okay. Well, I know prices vary, but for me, I charge, if it's an individual, $650. And if it's a couple, it's $1,000 to draft a will, which includes the designated healthcare surrogate and the living will. And typically what happens is we shy away from joint wills because we like to do two separate wills, one for the husband, one for the wife or spouse or significant other. That way, if one person were to die, one of the two couple dies, the other essentially would be inheriting. Typically what happens is, I'll use you for an example, Dana. I'll make the assumption that if you died, everything would go to Merle and vice versa. Well, Merle's probably sleeping with one eye open, so I don't know if that's...
Lee said all he ever got from me was debt. So, yeah, okay.
But the reason we would want to do two separate wills is if you did a joint will and either you or Merle died, now the will is written in stone and cannot be amended. Whereas if you have a will and Merle has his own will and you inherit everything of his, you can make changes and provisions as needs be as you age or acquire or relinquish other assets. So that's why we do what is essentially a mirror image wills rather than joint wills. So that's the cost. That was a long answer to a cost question, but there it was.
No, but again, I appreciate it. The detail and the explanation, like I've said, is just huge. So yeah. So David, what's the next question?
Oh, dang it. Why do you think I've been hiding my screen? I have nothing to give today. I feel like I'm,
Oh, David,
I asked the first question in the first place, so it's because I figured you would probably steal my thunder and take my question.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, in the comment section, feel free to jump on in there. Jennifer, we appreciate your question. Brent Davies says it's super helpful. Thank you, Brent. It is super helpful. Well, what else is there another thing that you wanted to hit on? I feel like anything else that we kind of need to know generally about wills and trusts? Well,
typically it's not a difficult thing. It just requires a serious attentiveness to it. We sent out a will questionnaire to anybody who is interested in getting a will or a trust, and it's very detailed, and it actually forces you to consider all of the things we've discussed, and also gives me the necessary information to draft those documents. And then typically I will send a rough draft based on what information has been shared with me, and we will formalize it over several back and forths until we get it right. And then it has to be signed, witnessed, signed in front of two witnesses with a notary. And it's a pretty simple process. During these times, we've had to institute extraordinary measures to get that done, handing documents through cracks in windows when people pull up to our office. But we can accomplish it and get it done. But it is something that needs to be done, and especially again when there are minor children involved, because you want to be able to have them cared for by the people you want to, rather than them going to the state and a third party determining, at least in the short term, who's going to watch them and take care of them. And you can set up the provisions not only for who cares for, but the money allocated to do so.
Wonderful.
I have two that have popped up. There's one from Jennifer again.
We go to talk again. But David, you're missing my very funny little antidote. As Don was saying that they're trying. There's
your antidote.
I was thinking. Would you stop talking?
No, hold on. No. Did you say antidote?
Here we go.
Antidote.
Antidote.
Oh, gee.
You were math teacher.
You were totally taking the fire out of my throat. I was going to say if there's a will, there's a way.
Oh, I'm taking you off the screen. Oh, so we have a question down at the bottom from Jennifer.
Jennifer, that was the $1,000 to do a will for a couple, one for each, and again that includes a living will and designated healthcare surrogate document.
And I got another one down there for you.
What's the best way to include assets you may acquire in the future in your will? Okay, in the will, there's typically a residuary estate section that we put in, so that if there are assets that are not specifically named or property that's not specifically named in the will, the residuary estate will encompass all of that. So any after acquired property subsequent to the will having been drafted could fall into that residuary estate and be part of and distributed according to the will. And also something to mention, the will can also, you can provide for a separate list of personal property. Oftentimes people have jewelry, heirlooms, works of art, furniture that their children have expressed an interest in having, or that they want so-and-so to have. Well, without having to put each of those items into a will, you can incorporate it by reference to the will in a separate writing, as long as it mentions the will, when it was dated and executed, and that list too is dated and executed. You can designate your personal property go to certain individuals, and it makes it very easy to do as well.
It's like a big movie, like they do in the movies. I give you.
Exactly.
The reading of the will. I had a question. How often would you recommend people updating their wills? And I'm assuming you do that as well. And it's not as much of it as a creating the entire will. It's just kind of like revisiting it on, what would you say, how often?
Well, I think the most common reasons I get people wanting to amend or redo wills is they've relocated from another state to Florida. And while Florida recognizes wills drafted in other states, as long as they are deemed executed properly in that state, Florida will accept them. But as far as revising, circumstances change, divorces, adoptions, different things. I mean, there are a variety of reasons to update a will. Most of it would have to do with property changes, either acquiring or disposing of property. But typically, if those things aren't happening, there really isn't much of a need to update a will. And wills are very easily amended. The legal term is called a codicil to a will, but it's a term of art for an amendment. But if we were to amend a will, it's very inexpensive, and you can essentially change any provision in a will, and it will become part of the will.
Awesome.
Well, Don, we want to thank you for joining us here today. We are going to be seeing you again here in just a little bit, I believe. Let me put it up here, because the next subject is one that I know a lot of people are interested in, and that is all about short sales. So we're going to talk to you about that.
Pleasures.
I'm not really sure what's going to, I mean, do you have any feel with this, with the current, well, we should be asking us, actually. I think we are going to see some short sales after this whole thing comes through. I mean, some people are going to get their jobs back and some might not, unfortunately. And I think we will start to see some of these folks to say, you know what, I'm going to get out of this house and rent and get out from under it. So we will see what happens with that. But guys, yes.
He's going to be talking about foreclosures. And I know Don does a fabulous job on foreclosure defense as well. So anyone interested in those short sales or foreclosures, come on back 4/29 at 2 p.m.
Don, thank you so much. Big round of applause for Don Gervase. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh my goodness. Now, did you say anecdote or antidote? Because if you said antidote, I have to laugh.
Anecdote, David.
Oh, no, your microphone got out at the most inopportune time and made you sound really dumb. But you know, anyway. But I know you better than that. I'm like, did she really just say anecdote?
Anecdote.
Yeah. It's you're doing it again. It sounds funny. It's something in the pitch of your voice.
Anecdote is not anecdote.
Yes, anecdote. Yes,
Anecdote,
we're beating a dead horse.
David.
Good. My goodness. So Don,
You don't know what questions to ask. Doesn't mean that you need to
I
start.
asked some questions. I asked the first one. I don't know why you think that I didn't ask any questions, but it's all good.
Okay, but that's great. And honestly, Don is fabulous. So I really hope that everyone out there, if you don't have a will, you need to get one. And I think I know with Merle's parents, we're looking at doing that, what he had suggested for your parents.
Yeah.
Make it easy for the kids and everyone, eventually when that day comes.
Yep. All right. Well, it is 2:32. Once again, we filled up half an hour. I don't know where time goes. By the way, for the first time ever, we are streaming live to Facebook, to YouTube. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Oh, I didn't know that.
We expanded our reach to 5 destinations, so I'm very happy about that. So I'll tell you about that afterwards. But right now, it's time to say goodbye. So,
all right, let me dance, David. Come on, I'm ready.
Yeah, I can do the dance, but I can't play the music at the same time. So
Hey,
you couldn't hear it last time. It was like this.